All right, good morning again. This is my fourth talk in 4 days, and so I'm a little tired, and I this morning sort of patched this together based on the experiences in the first 3 talks or events. So I don't know how this is going to come out, so if it doesn't come out right, well, we've had a good time anyway. Let's begin by talking about old levels of consciousness. Where we are today is a whole new level of consciousness. There's a whole new momentum. I'm a living example of this. I'm a bald mystic standing up here talking to you. But in that old level of consciousness, it was very much about fear. It was very much about this serious, heavy, weighty stuff going on in our world. And we were all taught, our ancestors have been taught to focus that way again and again and again and again. So we created this heavy focus in our world that we just keep being focused. What happens when we watch the news? Where do they tell us to focus? In the fear, in the heaviness, in the seriousness, in the weightiness. We are not uplifted when we read the news. Right? Who taught us to focus that way? Maybe a patriarchal history? Who said, stay afraid, you need us. You need us. Stay tuned, there's more to fear, keep tuning in. Who benefits from that? Who benefits from our continual focus on the weight? On the seriousness, on the heaviness, on the heartache, on the fear? Who benefits? Who are we supporting by that focus? That old consciousness, right? We tend to get sort of stirred up in that with events like are happening right now. We get into our righteous zone, our righteous side. The right side of history, the right side of this moment. Who is that righteousness serving? Who is that side taking serving? Not serving our old consciousness. That too is not uplifting. That's a battle mentality, isn't it? Our side versus their side. As if there is an other. An old consciousness, a separation consciousness. It isn't about oneness, it's about me and you, not us. Not us. What we're perpetuating in our continued focus in that way is an old way of creating. The mechanism of creation, and I tell you this from experience, having seen it, having been in the divine realms and watched it, been as it, the mechanism of creation is so simple. It's a 2-part formula, very simple. How am I focused? And what am I intending? That is an energy, it's a little formula, it's a reflective formula. We've been focused in fear, intending to stay safe. And in that, all of these things get perpetuated about needing to evaluate and judge, be righteous, focus on the heaviness, focus on the fear, focus on the conflict. So we have been perpetuating that creation. We have been creating through that old consciousness. You know this. You can feel this. You can look at our history. You can also know that we're beginning to come out of that. Now, I've many times told about my very first metaphysical experience. I'm going to tell it again because it's relevant to this moment. I used to be an agnostic healthcare executive in Washington, D.C. I didn't have big questions about life. I just didn't care about spirituality. I just wanted to be normal. And in the summer of 2000, I started hearing a voice that said I was supposed to be doing something very important, which I already thought I was. And I tried to ignore the voice, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. In the December of 2000, I had my first metaphysical event. I went into the body and being of Jesus on the cross at the moment of crucifixion. And in the moment where I realized where and in whom I was, suddenly I just knew everything about how humanity had been evolving. I watched everything. I just got this instant download of how we've been evolving. And I watched in that experience what caused the crucifixion. And it wasn't what my grandmother told me, that there had been a betrayal by a disciple and some people in power who felt threatened by the presence of Jesus. In my experience, which is all I can ever talk about, what caused the crucifixion was the momentum of a mindset. This fear and conflict ideology that had taken ages to perpetuate and cultivate and deeply entrench. I watched that momentum come to a head in the crucifixion and then continue on in other ways. But it continued. That same momentum of fear and conflict continued, just in lots of different ways. And in that experience, I experienced the death of Jesus. And in that moment, just like you hear in a near-death experience, I felt the spirit of Jesus pulled up out of the body and then hover above the crowd. And now in this moment, I experience everything that everyone in that crowd is experiencing, who's filled with rage and grief and sorrow and shock and all of these different things. But in every single heart, regardless of any other emotion present, there was sorrow. There was a thread of sorrow, and it stretched all the way back through all of time, through every human heart, through all of the people at the crucifixion, and into every heart in current day. Every human sharing this thread of sorrow, and the source of that sorrow was our deeply held belief that we're separate from this thing that we call God. It is our sorrow of separation. And in that moment, I watched then the evolution of Christianity from that point forward to current day. And I watched all the exploitations of Christ's death. I watched kings and cardinals and bishops scrambling to carve out dominions in Christ's name, century after century after century, and I watched death, I watched destruction, and most of all, I watched domination again and again and again. Now, of course, there was goodness that came out of the evolution of Christianity, and there still is. But it was the way that the goodness was being used that was my lesson. And that was that mankind at that time did not want a good Christ that healed. Mankind wanted a good Christ that conquered. That conquering mentality, that fear and conflict ideology. So, guess how we've been perpetuating the teachings, focusing on that fear and that conflict ideology with an intention to conquer. We've been creating in that way. We continued it. We were conditioned. We were taught that way. So we've created a world based in fear, based in conflict, one that feels heavy, one that feels serious, one that feels so hard and out of alignment with our nature that it made us forget our nature. You all know this. In our awakening, where we're beginning to remember, oh my God, this actually doesn't align with how my spirit feels. Right? So now, in our new consciousness, we're not perpetuating that same kind of creation. We're not focusing in the same way. We're not intending the same thing. We're using the formula to create differently. Coming out of a fear-based mentality or mindset, out of the heaviness, and into much more light-heartedness, literally light-heartedness. Both of those key words are pivotal here. Light-heartedness, not an intellectual, not a conditioned old belief. Now, what's happening in this is that we're discovering a hell of a lot more fun. We're remembering, oh man, I actually have a playful nature. Right? You're sitting in a center where Reverend Pat leads with so much playfulness and verve and upbeatness and whatever. You're very, very blessed in that way. But I can tell you in the divine realms, in my mystical experiences, oh my God, the exquisite playfulness, the kind of orneriness going on up there. When we talk about the namaste up there, it's like high-fiving each other at the bar. Everybody's just like, woo, yee-haw. So excited, so joyful, because that's what we come from. We come from the source of fun, the source of joy. That's our source. That's the thing animating our life experience. It's giving us life experience, but we've been focused elsewhere. We've been focused on intending something else because they told us we should do that. The old consciousness told us we should do that. After the crucifixion, this really weighty, heavy experience, the very next day, I find myself walking down in the divine realms, walking down a hallway, and there's doorways on either side. And at the very end, there's a huge arched doorway with light beaming through it. So, I know that's the door I need to go to. And I run to that door, and I start to open that door, and the door flies open, and there's a light being that just is holding the door open, laughing hysterically at me. And then behind him was dozens of light beings, all of them laughing at me. And it was like I was late to my own party. And they were literally like, "Where have you been?" I'm like, "I don't know. I didn't know how to get here." And the whole, immediately their energy just blew me wide open, which was important because I just the day before had all of that weighty stuff that I'm going to have to integrate into my being. And they've just opened me wide. And also, we were getting ready. The reason I was there with that soul group, I was getting ready to have a very weighty meeting again with a godlike being about the conflict nature of humanity. So imagine how important it was to blow me wide open with joy and playfulness and put me at ease and open me up so I could take all of that in. This is the kind of thing that happens again and again and again. Archangel Michael teasing with me. I went into the mind of Buddha at his moment of enlightenment, and I see all the things that Buddha saw in his understanding of our reality, of our divine world. And again, it's very weighty, heavy stuff. And at the very, very end of that experience, Buddha himself shows up right in front of me. And he has piercing joy in his eyes. And he looks right at me and says, "You see, it's fun." Now imagine how open I am. I'm just bawling with joy. I'm like, oh my God, taking in all of this enormous information. Now, 4.5 years ago, I just started to channel this gigantic stadium full of divine beings that are so happy. They're so joyous. They call themselves wise cheerleaders. Now, imagine a stadium feel. How does a stadium feel? But it's exciting. It's an energy of togetherness. It's an energy of cheerleading. It's an energy of common intention. Now imagine a stadium with Jesus and Buddha and all of that loving, exciting energy. They teach in an environment in a way that holds us open, that is the new consciousness itself. It is the energy of the new consciousness. This is what's happening. This is why I'm such a happy camper. This is the energy that flows through me unabashedly. No filters. It's just love in its truest essence, which is so damn happy. So joyful. When people are in consultation with me and we have an experience of going into the stadium with consensus, the first thing they inevitably say is, "Oh my God, so much joy." Oof, yes, yes. You know what needs that joy most of all? Our heaviness. Our fear, our sorrow, our conflict. That needs it most of all. This isn't about rejecting all of that true heartache. This is about bringing it in. This is about saying, "Babe, you need this." This is what we're all carrying, and we're all offering ourselves now. And we're also offering it to each other, just like I'm doing in this moment. Now, I'm going to take a break from my enthusiasm to read a little bit from my latest book, just to reiterate what I'm talking about. Now, I'm very happy about the title of this book, Navigating the Wondrous Holy Shit Show of Awakening. We don't usually talk about the mess of this. We like to talk about in our awakening world that everything is all rainbows and flowers and all nicey nice, and that's not always true. It's a shit show sometimes. That's okay. You know what that shit show needs? Joy. Needs some playfulness, right? All right, I'm going to read a little bit of this. It's important to realize that we are all being called to recover the key missing spirit in spirituality. Big, jolly love. Spiritual teachings, practices, environments, and support have historically been extremely somber. Theology is heavily weighted in stories of death, conflict, hardship, morality, and overcoming. Meditation teachers, yoga instructors, body workers speak in these subdued tones and say namaste in a way that implies divine greetings are supposed to be solemn. Ministers and counselors encourage us to sort through our sins and our sorrows, to pray for forgiveness and revere the great, serious teachers and saints. Being spiritually oriented in this way has not cultivated or honored the playful, loving nature of Source, God, or ourselves. In fact, spirituality has kept our focus away from lighthearted, sacred relationship. And as a result, living with a repressed, jolly spirit in a deeply serious world has been exhausting. This is not to dismiss the hardships or sorrows we face in the human experience. On the contrary, the very idea of putting jolly in a spiritual context can help us understand how we contribute to our hardships or sorrows without realizing it. We've been conditioned to live oriented in a way that actively pushes our innocently playful self away. This starts at a young age. We get all kinds of messages in our very serious world that tell us it's not safe to be vulnerable, so we begin shutting down our innocent, playful nature. And then, without realizing it, we gradually begin to grieve the loss of that part of ourselves. And that grief just adds to the heaviness we carry in our hearts. Spiritual awakening compels us to rediscover and reclaim more of our innate truth and acclimate to living in that expanded awareness. Big Jolly Love is not only an innate divine truth, it is a powerful doorway to ever deeper truths. So, some ways you can think about employing this, stepping into this higher consciousness is very, very simple. If you ask yourself, when we think about that mechanism of creation, focus and intention, just ask yourself in any given moment, how am I focused? When you wake up in the morning, when you're walking, when you're making your coffee, when you're greeting each other, how am I focused in this moment? What am I intending? When you ask yourselves these questions, you begin to realize what your default has been. You begin to open up and shift your mindful presence into something that feels more aligned and just feels easier. It feels lighter. You can ask yourself, what am I trusting in this moment? In me, in others, in what I'm watching or listening to? What am I trusting? Am I trusting fear? Or am I trusting love? Am I trusting my own being? And the easiest of all, the easiest way of this mindful stepping into this higher consciousness is the question of what brings me joy? Truly, even in the smallest little things, does this bring me joy? This morning when I was sitting here putting these notes together, I'm literally asking myself, does this bring me joy to focus in this way? Everything. Does this bring me joy? Anything that you're focusing on and intending, if you're doing it in joy, it's just so much more fun. And that's the energy you're offering to the world. That's your contribution in any given moment. So what divine playfulness teaches us is to remember our truth, how to access that truth, to open the door to that truth so easily. It teaches us to see and focus beyond fear, beyond the old. It teaches us that we can bring our pain to light, not try to keep it outside of it, and not try to keep the pain of others outside of the light. It teaches us to call in more excitement, to call in more fun. It teaches us to say to creation, ooh, I want more of this. Feel what I just said. It teaches us to say to creation, I want more of this. That divine truth, that divine fun, more of this. Not just for me, for the world. Don't you think our world could use that? Every single one of these things, when we do it, we are mobilizing. We are catalyzing higher and higher consciousness. More and more healing. Deeper and deeper transformation. We're anchoring in that new consciousness. The new consciousness that we're all part and parcel of and on the leading edge of right now. All right, my time is running out quickly here. I'm going to read you one last thing. I'm obsessed with this book, The Prophetess by Shalane Harkin. I think I've quoted it every single talk I've done. I'm probably going to do it again tonight. So if you have not gotten this, I highly recommend it. This is the continuation of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, which is one of the best-selling books in all of history, written 100 years ago by a man, and it's subject-oriented, so he's giving sort of the prophet perspective, and here comes 100 years later, Shalane Harkin giving the female version of this wisdom, again, subject-oriented. So here's what she has to say about joy. Speak to us of joy, and the prophetess spoke. I want to speak with you about all the dazzling wonders our universe is plotting on your behalf. Become quiet and eavesdrop on the secrets shared between the flower's heart and the sun. Those intimacies that awaken the closed eyes of the bud to the astonishment of all this great light ever pouring on their behalf. Come, let us stop pretending that the stars are a tough crowd. Let us get on with remembering they're a wild, jovial audience in nighttime's great arena, applauding and applauding with their golden hands the courageous stumble of our tender earthly mess, all those forgivable things we get up to down here. Come, let us stop this lifeless practice of forgetting this world is a jewel-packed blessing. Rise each morning knowing there's a song of wonderment, our cosmic composer, sung into us that is ceaseless. Our hearts are ongoingly courted by a wild, great beauty. It's time we make a firm commitment to receive the resuscitation of our joy. Let us make a firm commitment to stop enabling these wild hearts to do anything but exactly what they've always wanted to do anything but love. And if your joy should become a distant, faded thing, I give you this prescription, that each day before our surroundings become flat with familiarity, and the shapes of our lives click into place dimensionless and average as Tetris cubes, say, wow. Before hunger knocks from our bellies like a cantankerous old man and the duties of the day stack up like dishes, and the architecture of our basic needs commissions all thought to construct the four-door sedan of safety, say, wow. Before gravity clings to our skin like a cumbersome parasite, and the colored dust of dreams sweeps itself obscure in the vacuum of reason, say, wow. Each morning, before we wrestle the world and our heart into the shape of our brain, look around and say, wow. Feed yourself fire. Scoop up the day entire like a planet-sized bouquet of marvel sent by the universe directly into your arms and say, wow. Break yourself down into the basic components of primitive awe and let the crescendo of each moment carbonate every capillary and say, wow. And before our vision gets too veiled, let the sun stay a conflagration of homing pigeons that fights through fire each day to find us. For what is this acumen we've developed to describe our terrors? Why are stories of pain so well carved and whittled? Why these PhD certificates of our errors hanging over all of ourselves? No matter what the degree of joy, of beauty, why not give ourselves over to that? No matter how far we are from where we are aiming to go, why not look at it differently? Why not say, I am light, building a kingdom of myself? The deepest hope of happiness is to need no reason for itself. But if you need a reason to allow yourself the most natural gift, let it be because birds throw themselves into the sky like a handful of winged seeds to go pollinate the south with music. Let it be that each evening the sun creates a symphony of colors and the tones of your heart have the palette to match it. Let it be because you have two hands that can hold another's soft face and magical eyes with black holes in the middle of them that spend their whole lives pulling in all light and beauty. Every bucket of your darkness is alchemized into wisdom simply by handing it to light. When we are born, we are given an automatically refillable bag of jewels called a soul that we can share with any living thing to make it sparkle and sing. Joy is your essence and your birthright. Every beauty leaps from the spring of your open heart. All creation is made to laugh with you.